Most people think that relationships end because of fighting. That is not the case. You can fight with somebody for decades and stay together. The thing that actually ends relationships is not usually conflict, it's contempt. And the worst part about that is most people, one, don't know what contempt is, right? We think of contempt of court. That's not what it is in a relationship. And a lot of people have no idea that they're even doing it. By the time contempt shows up in a relationship, that is usually when the relationship is in really serious trouble. And that's usually when my phone rings. I'm Cheryl Sayre, and today we are going to talk about one of the most destructive forces in any relationship: contempt. It's not the disagreement, it's not frustration, it's not even anger, it's contempt. Because anger says, I don't like what you did. And contempt says, I don't like who you are. Those are two very different things. Contempt happens when frustration turns into superiority. Instead of seeing our partner as a human being who made a mistake, what happens is you start seeing them as somebody who is fundamentally flawed. So, what does that look like? You stop saying you hurt me and you start saying you're selfish. You stop saying I need support and start saying you're lazy. You're always sitting on the couch. You're never helping out around here. You stop saying my feelings are hurt and you start saying, I don't think you know what love is. I don't think you know how to love. I don't think you love me. Contempt is pain that starts to look like superiority. And we try to position ourselves above the person who we're in a relationship with as though there's something fundamentally wrong with them. So, how does it shift? Most people don't even really notice because it is kind of gradual unless you're in a certain type of relationship and right from the beginning it is there and you might not recognize it because sometimes abuse seems normal to most people, right? So how do you become contemptuous to begin with? It usually starts with disappointment. You need something you didn't get. You felt unseen, unheard, unimportant, rejected. And over time, that turns into resentment. The resentment becomes criticism. The criticism becomes contempt. It's like its own little cycle. The problem with that is the contempt feels justified. And that is what makes it dangerous because that's another huge mistake that I see a lot in couples and even in friendships, even in parental relationships. One of the biggest mistakes is that there is an assumption that I feel justified, so my behavior is acceptable. And that is not the same thing because you can be hurt and disappointed and angry and still communicate in a way that damages the relationship. So your feelings may be understandable. Like, yes, you're hurt, but the behavior that follows the feeling can be very destructive. And the destruction usually occurs when you move into the role of prosecutor versus partner. So, what the heck does that mean, right? So, one of the signs of contempt is that conversations stop being conversations and they start becoming trials. You stop trying to understand your partner altogether. And what you do is you start building a case against them. You become the prosecutor. Every single mistake that they make becomes the evidence. Every disagreement becomes proof. Every single flaw gets added to the file. So instead of, can we solve this problem? That question becomes, can I prove what kind of person you are? That's contempt. And usually at that point, this is when people start going to their friends and saying, am I crazy? Can you believe they did this? The problem with that is friendships can accidentally become dangerous because healthy friendship will help reality test you, make sure you're grounded, check your thinking, see, like, are you missing anything, any details? A healthy friendship is going to challenge you and not just jump in your boat with you, right? So when contempt enters the relationship, things can be different. And you stop looking for perspective and you're collecting a jury, right? So if you notice the difference between a healthy friendship is going to say, I don't know, I know you and you have a tendency to dot, dot, dot. You might not like it, but it may be, it may be the truth. That may be how other people are experiencing you. In an unhealthy friendship, you literally start building a jury. And that's not to say that your friends may have been coming to you for a long time saying, hey, I noticed the way this person treats you, and that's not okay. That's a different story, right? Even then, you may have been trying to reality test your friends. So basically, I want you to notice the difference because reality testing says, help me understand this, help me understand what's going on. Jury building says, tell me I'm right. That's it. Bottom line, tell me I'm right. So now every conversation with a friend becomes another piece of the evidence. Every person who agrees with you becomes a witness. Every person who challenges you becomes someone who doesn't understand. And before long, you have built an entire case against your partner without solving the actual problem. So you're out here doing all this work, but the actual issue still remains. And as long as those problems are there, it's going to show up in other aspects of the relationship. And one of the areas that people don't really talk about a lot is contempt kills desire. It just does. Nobody wants to be touched by somebody that they're putting on trial. So on the other person's side, it's really hard to feel emotionally close to someone who constantly feels judged. It's hard to feel sexually attracted to someone who looks at you with disgust, right? It is hard to feel safe with someone who treats every single mistake that you make as inadequacy. And contempt absolutely fundamentally destroys emotional relationship, emotional safety that every single relationship needs to survive. Without emotional safety, you are heading downhill really freaking fast. So, I presented you with the issue. How do you solve the problem? The first thing that we need to do is catch ourselves when you feel contempt. Ask yourself, what is underneath of this? Because contempt is hardly ever the first feeling. What's usually underneath contempt is hurt, fear, rejection, loneliness, grief, or disappointment. Instead of you're selfish when you're having an argument with your partner or you're feeling something, instead of jumping right into you're selfish, maybe say to them, I feel really alone right now. And instead of saying you don't care, maybe say, you know what, I don't feel important. I don't feel like we're spending time together. I want more of that. Can we do that? Instead of saying something like, "You never think about me," maybe say, "You know what? I feel really disconnected." One of those things creates defensiveness in the relationship, and the other one creates possibility of repair. and you want to have the possibility of repair. It is a simple reframing of what is happening internally and the way we're approaching it. So before I go, I think it's important to note that contempt does not start with hatred. Contempt starts with pain. The problem with pain disguised as contempt is that eventually we create a situation of where we are superior, like morally superior to the other person. At least that's the position that you might be trying to handle the relationship from, right? I'm above you, I'm collecting evidence against you. This is the type of character you are. And when we operate from there, it eventually pushes the other person away, the same person that we want to feel close to. So if you find that you are constantly criticizing, collecting evidence, building a jury, or viewing your partner as beneath you, don't just ask them what's wrong. Ask yourself, what pain have I stopped expressing directly? Because contempt is often what happens when hurt goes underground in a relationship. It can't survive it. It won't. A person can only take being what I hear a lot as beaten down for so long. All right. That's what I got for you. And I hope you learned something about contempt today that is not contempt of court.